Right, Year 11, so it's lesson 3 and this is a slightly different format. We do understand that in the last couple of lessons in a few places the sound dropped out of the PowerPoint, so we're really sorry that that's happened. Something to do with the microphone and the laptop. So we're going to try this and we'll try and mix it up for you so we have different styles of lesson for you to watch and engage with. And remember that every lesson does start live, so you can talk to us about what happened last time, what we're doing in this lesson, and use that chat in the lesson, and you can also comment on the stream on Google Classroom in your section. You can comment, other people can see your comments from the class, and I can see them as well, and your teachers can see them and engage with you that way. So we're on lesson 3 of the creative writing now. It's really heating up and it's getting exciting because you're halfway through. We're halfway through what will be a great piece of creative writing that we can give you a GCSE grade for, and we're looking for a mark out of 40. And really, you're looking at hitting 25 as the minimum. 25 is a good solid 6. We want to be getting 6, 7, 8s here, don't we? We want to be getting a good mark, a good solid creative writing piece under our belts. The first lesson we looked at light, talked about the arc of the rainbow, we talked about the light of the river, glossiness and murkiness. We've covered all that ground already. Last lesson we looked at the tree line. We discussed the trees perhaps being personified as military soldiers, as guardians of the landscape. Look at the trunks in the water being consumed and submerged by the flood. We also talked about different shades and colours we can find within colour. It's not just a simple brown colour, there are shades within here. There's taupe, there's jade, the greys and fawns. Use paint colour charts on Google to help you find colours, they're really helpful. So lesson 3 today, we're going to really focus on the flood itself, because that was a task, to write about a flood in place. So we're going to talk about this flood that seems to have come around. This obviously was a path, there are benches here. People could walk along here and they could sit. The river has burst its banks. The river has taken control. When we think of a flood, we think about nature and the power of nature. Remember the prelude, exposure and poems we've read in the past, where nature is such a powerful force. Here, nature, the water, has overwhelmed everything else. Yes, the sky, the rainbow, the trees, and the fields and the grass, they're all the natural world as well, but there's been a conflict between water and its surroundings, and the water has won. When the water here, with its pressure and its density and its power and its cascading, has come across the river, it's won and it's beaten the rest of the world in this battle. So we're going to consider the flood now as a kind of an assault, as an attack on the rest of the natural world, and as something that's been triumphant and victorious, and that's how we're going to describe it in paragraph 3. So to look at that, let's get rid of this little wavy line, we're going to think about war, which you might think is a funny thing to mention in terms of floods and nature, but actually it's not unlike it. You think about a flood or a tsunami coming your way, or coming to the fields across the back of Van Dyke. It is an absolute attack. It's an ambush, it comes out of nowhere. You wake up in the morning and the fields are flooded. Think about an army preparing for battle. Let's think about the language we could use, and that makes this paragraph what's called an extended metaphor. So an extended metaphor is when you take one metaphor, one metaphorical idea, which is war, conflict, the flood almost being like an army, and we describe it all the way through the paragraph in that way, as it coming with an assault. So let's think about language that we might use to describe an assault, an attack, the preparation to go into battle. So Ms. Pepper and I looked at this yesterday and came up with a few key words that you might associate with war and battle. Strike, banners, arsenal, victory, charge, strategy, territory. When the flood came, its strategy was clearly to take as much territory as possible. The invasion came overnight like a charge at war. The casualties were the trees and the benches. By morning it had gained victory, the conflict was over. There was so much you could do here with these key words, building up the preparation for the battle, or just describing it as a battle scene after the event. The aftermath of the battle was brutal. The fields have been able to make no resistance. So much you can do. Now what I would suggest happens here is that you pause this video for a moment now and put some of these words together to create perhaps 5 sentences using this language to describe the surge of water, the flood as it comes or as it arrived or as it settled, and how that can be related to it sending its own spears across the river, its own flaunting its banners, presenting itself as the most powerful force. So pause for 5 minutes, 5 sentences, using as many of these keywords as you can, but making sure it still makes sense. Don't overdo it. You don't want to try and shove them all in. So 5 minutes of pause time, and then we'll come back. We're back. So have a look at what you've done. You could, if you have a highlighter or if you're typing on the screen, you could use the highlighting tool to highlight the words you've picked. Have you used a variety of sentence structure? Yesterday, or last lesson, might not have been yesterday, but last lesson, we looked at punctuation, and you punctuated an unpunctuated paragraph. Is there a place in your writing today that you can find to put in a semicolon? When you talk about battle and conflict, it's prime time to start using colons for impact and effect, a dash for pause, just before the surge, just before the onslaught. Then it happened, then the waters came. You could almost go quite sort of mythical, biblical, religious in the idea of huge floods and devastation. Okay? So here we are back to the image. This is the section we're looking at. You're going to write paragraph 3 of your writing today, focusing on how the flood has dominated, how it's overwhelmed, how it's been victorious, and how it's triumphed over the land. So the same as the last 2 paragraphs, we're looking at 250 to 300 words. Should say third, sorry, that's my editing error. You've done 2 marvellous paragraphs already. Semantic field of battle, semantic meaning meaning. So you're talking about trying to create, as we discussed, this concept of it being quite militaristic, of it being perhaps even an enemy. It's coming in and it's taking over. Range of punctuation really important. Let's remember, we've looked at a dash several times. We've talked about semicolon, splitting 2 sentences. We've talked about colon for impact. There's no reason why you can't use colon for list. You could list all the things a flood has destroyed. Trees, benches, pathways, pitches. But overall, what you're really intending to do is suggest this flood is an entirely powerful and dominating force. But by the end, you could decide that it slows down, that it's halted, that it begins to recede. But what is it that gets the flood to stop? The rains end? Does the sun take command? Does the land regain its territory? Think about, if you do history particularly, trench warfare and the movement between the 2 sides.